Welcome back. According to a new survey of educators in low-income classrooms, the availability of quality books and furnishings for classroom reading areas relies largely on educators personally funding these materials. Joining me to discuss the current state of classroom libraries and how the literary rich checklist can help educators foster an environment with resources to create more engaged readers. And we're also going to talk about the most significant challenges that educators face when trying to meet the checklist standards. Renowned literacy expert and education researcher, Dr. Susan V. Newman, and Julianne Appleton, Director of Researching Insights for First Book. Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's nice to be here.
Thank you both for joining me. So in today's educational atmosphere, Dr. Newman, what is the biggest problem that children face?
Well, I think the biggest problem, especially since the pandemic occurred, is access to books. Many of our children are living in communities that we call book deserts, communities bereft of books for young children. And if you have no books, it's very hard to create engaged readers. We know that many of the public libraries had to close. Many places do not have school libraries. And so the classroom library takes on a very important role in getting children excited about reading.
And that's interesting. So there are food deserts. Now there are book deserts as well. Julianne, talk to us about the Literacy Rich checklist and how initial users responded to it.
Yeah, so the Literacy Rich checklist was developed because we know that there is, as Susan was saying, a wealth of existing research that talks about the importance of immersing children in book-oriented, literacy-rich environments. But currently, 2.5 million children are enrolled in districts where there are no libraries. So for children living in low-income communities, that access to books is just really limited. And so in these areas, having a really high-quality classroom library becomes such an important tool for immersing children in these literacy-rich environments that they need in order to thrive. And so we conducted this study and developed this resource as a way to help educators build their own classroom libraries in the most efficient and effective way possible. So the Literacy-Rich Classroom Library Checklist is really designed to do just that. It's designed to help guide educators as they build their classroom libraries, because we know so many educators are devoted to creating the learning environment that will lead to their students' most fruitful outcomes and academic achievements. So having this literacy-rich classroom library checklist will just take the guesswork out of it for educators. They know exactly what goes into a classroom library. And honestly, the initial feedback we saw to it was really positive. A lot of educators had no idea all that could go into a classroom library. They responded with, "Oh my goodness, I had no idea that so much should be going into my classroom reading area to make it warm and inviting. I had no idea I needed so many books of different genres." So it's a bit of a learning tool for educators, and also it's just designed to help them bolster their classroom libraries for their students.
And Julian, tell us more about First Book and how it comes into play when helping educators to secure the books that they need for their classrooms.
Yeah, so First Book's mission is to advance educational equity for children living in poverty. And we do that by aggregating the largest online community of educators serving children in need in the country. So we serve over 525,000 educators, both formal and informal educators. They represent everything from Title I classrooms to libraries to health clinics, food banks, really any program that serves 70% or more children in need. And these programs and educators are terribly under-resourced and desperately need access to books. So if they register with First Book, they get access to brand new, high quality books and educational materials for their classrooms and their programs. So we encourage any teachers that serve low-income students to visit firstbook.org to register.
Dr. Newman, how important is it to have physical books available for students in the classroom?
It's enormously important. So one of the things we know is that literacy is a social activity, and you can't be social with a Kindle or a telephone. It's not the same thing. And so one of the things that we want to promote in a classroom library is the physical book where children get an opportunity to actually hang out with one another and enjoy reading. Think of a book club. It's the same phenomena. It's a social kind of experience. So the physical book, the ability to touch a book, turn its pages, has to occur early on in a child's life in order to really begin to understand how meaningful it is and how it becomes a habit for the rest of your life. So there is no substitute for a Kindle or any kind of electronic digital book than a simple physical book. The book also needs to reflect who children are, their identity, their sense of who they are. So we want to see books of great diversity and multiculturalism in our classroom libraries, where children experience activities about themselves as well as others. So that is why the library is so critically important in children's lives.
Well, Julianne, is quantity more valuable than quality when a teacher is building that classroom library?
So the ideal classroom library will strike a balance between quality and quantity. So we know that quantity is really important because book choice is really important to students, right? If you just hand them a book and tell them to read it, they're not going to be quite as engaged as if they get to choose their own books. So quantity is important, and the checklist does recommend at least a minimum of 10 books per child. But then we also know that the content of that books has to be of a wide variety. So the books have to be of a wide variety of genres and a wide variety of reading levels, so that any student, no matter their interest or their reading level, will find a book that they really enjoy in that classroom library. And then, as Susan was saying, it's also critically important to have these titles represent the diverse and multicultural nature of our society, so that students can see themselves reflected in the stories that they read. So quantity and quality are both important.
Dr. Newman, how can educators and school leaders maximize the impact of those classroom resources?
Well, I think one of the things that you raise is a classroom library is not just a thing, it needs to be used. And so we need to have children have opportunity to actually use a classroom library during their daily schedule. That means giving children time to hang out at a library, to do independent reading, to enjoy books that may be high level or low level, not low level in terms of poor text, but just enjoyable kinds of books. So it really is important for teachers and administrators to recognize that children will need time to use that library in order to maximize the amount of time they're actually spending reading.
My first job was as a page in the library in Vacaville, California. I still love books, and I think that there's nothing like holding a book in your hands. So where can we go to find that checklist and take a look at some additional sources?
Sure. So educators or anyone interested in this research can go to firstbook.org to view the checklist and also view the full results of the study that led to this checklist. And we encourage any educators serving children in need to also visit firstbook.org to register and see if they can access some of the books through our Firstbook Marketplace. So firstbook.org if you're interested in more information.
All right, well, like I said, there's nothing like a book, but if you'd also like to purchase books for classroom libraries, you can do that on the site, firstbook.org. Dr. Susan V. Newman and Julianne Appleton, Director of Researching Insights for First Book, thank you so much for joining me. Happy school year.
Thank you so much.